Think about the person closest to you in the world. Like, picture them sitting across from you right now.
Okay, I have someone in mind.
Now, try to look at them. I mean, really look at them without remembering a single argument you've ever had.
Oh, that is tough.
Right. And without bringing up a single expectation you have for them tomorrow. And without even labeling them as your partner or your sibling or your friend.
You want me to just observe them as a human being taking up space?
Exactly. Just a human being in space. And, well, if you are struggling to do that, you are definitely not alone.
Definitely not.
Because, according to the philosophy of J. Krishnamurti, if you can't drop those memories and those labels, you aren't actually looking at that person at all.
You're just looking at your own memories of them.
Yeah. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are spending our time today unpacking this incredibly challenging exploration of human consciousness from a transcript by philosopher J. Krishnamurti.
And it really is a fascinating piece of source material.
It is. We're focusing on this idea that our brains are fundamentally trapped. Trapped in words, in categories, and ultimately time itself.
It's a remarkable set of ideas because it forces us to question, the very mechanics of how we experience reality.
Completely.
Because we spend our whole lives building up these psychological structures, our identities, our vocabularies, our histories, and we rely on them to navigate the world.
We assume that makes us wiser, right? Like an accumulation of knowledge.
Right. We think it grounds us. But the central argument we are exploring today suggests the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It proposes that this constant reliance on language and memory actually acts as a veil.
A veil that keeps us from the present moment.
Exactly. It prevents us from experiencing the freshness of the present and keeps us locked in this state of perpetual self-centeredness.
Which brings us to the core question, one that sounds honestly incredibly simple on the surface, but breaks your brain when you try to apply it. What is the actual difference between thinking about yourself and observing yourself? Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to understand what true observation is, we first have to examine what we're doing instead. Because realistically, we spend almost all of our waking hours doing the exact opposite of observing.
We're caught in a loop.
The continuous loop of thinking about oneself. And this isn't just about staring in the mirror or being overtly narcissistic.
Right. It's more subtle than that.
Much more subtle. It's a constant expansion or contraction of the ego. The most obvious way this manifests is through our churn of material desires.
Like sitting around wanting better food.
Better food, better clothing, a nicer house. We obsess over getting a promotion, making more money, or finding more sex.
It's basically the baseline operating system for modern life.
Yeah, the desire to acquire or upgrade our physical reality just to enhance our own sense of self.
And I think most of us, we can recognize that material loop. We can admit that wanting a nicer car is fundamentally self-centered.
Sure.
But the philosophy goes much further than that. The text points out that this egotistical loop also manifests as the desire for spiritual or moral progress.
This is where it gets tricky.
Yeah, it's the thoughts that say, I am making progress in my therapy, or I am better than I was yesterday, or even I must meditate more, or I must be a kinder person.
Right.
And I have to push back on this a little bit. Wait, isn't self-improvement a good thing?
It's a fair question.
Because we structure our entire society around the idea that self-improvement is this noble pursuit. If I am trying to be a more patient person or a kinder neighbor, how can that possibly be grouped in with wanting a bigger bank account?
It feels wrong, doesn't it?
It feels like we are punishing people for trying to grow.
Yeah, and that is the natural friction everyone experiences when they first encounter this idea.
Yeah.
It feels completely counterintuitive to label moral striving as selfish.
It really does.
But if we look at the underlying mechanism, the actual why behind the action, the picture starts to change.
Okay, walk me through that.
Any thought driven by the mandate of I must achieve this state or I need to become this type of person is fundamentally an egocentric activity.
Because it always starts with I.
Exactly. The objective doesn't actually matter. There is a brilliant comparison made in these ideas. An austere monk who renounces all worldly possessions thinks about himself just as much as a Wall Street broker.
Oh, wow.
The monk is just doing it in the name of God or in the name of enlightenment.
So it's like a mental treadmill.
That's a great way to put it.
You feel like you're moving forward because you're sweating, you're putting in the work, you are reading the self-help books, you're meditating, you're doing all this moral heavy lifting.
Right.
But mechanically, you are staying in the exact same self-centered place because the entire project is still about you.
Yes. The core operating system hasn't changed at all. You've just swapped out, I want a sports car. for I want inner peace.
But the I want is still the thing running the show.
Highly accurate. The pursuit of spiritual progress is often just the ego putting on a different set of clothes.
It's sneaky.
Very. It is still the self trying to accumulate something to feel secure or superior. So as long as the driving force is, I am trying to achieve this for myself, it remains a self-centered activity.
You are thinking about yourself. You're not observing.
Precisely.
Well, if all of our self-improvement and all of our moral striving and our ambition is just this endless ego trap, we are left in a very uncomfortable position.
We still have to live in the world.
Right. We still have to interact with our environment, which leads us directly to the alternative the text offers, which is true observation.
Yes.
But to achieve this state of observation, we apparently have to give up our primary tool for navigating reality, which is language.
That's the key. True observation is defined here as looking at something entirely without the word and entirely without reaction.
Entirely without the word. I'm struggling to picture what that actually looks like in practice because our brains are narrative machines. We label everything instantly.
They absolutely are. The challenge posed by Krishnamurti is whether we can observe a mountain and not silently call it mountain in our minds.
That is so hard.
Can we look at the evening light hitting a cloud, taking in its color and immensity without describing it to ourselves?
Yeah.
Can we look at trees or a river or the evening star or just the silence of a morning without immediately cataloging it?
Stripping away the linguistic filter.
Exactly.
There is a highly relatable example used in the transcript to illustrate this. Watching a hot air balloon.
Yes, the balloon example.
Imagine you are standing in a field in the early morning, and you watch a balloon slowly lifting off the ground. You watch it ascend very slowly. You see the gondola hanging beneath it.
Total silence.
Total silence.
Hmm.
You are entirely absorbed in the visual reality of this massive object floating upward. But then, almost inevitably, the brain boots up the commentary machine.
It always does.
You think, by Jove, I wish I were up there, which is the exact phrase from the text, by the way.
Yeah.
Or you look at the tiny gondola swaying in the wind and think, how incredibly dangerous.
And the observation ends right there.
Just snaps.
What's fascinating here is the mechanism of why the brain does this. Why it is so utterly caught in this network of words.
Why can't we just look at the balloon?
Krishnamurti emphasizes this concept of the freshness of a mind. When we look at that balloon or a cloud, our brain immediately reaches into its filing cabinet of vocabulary to categorize it.
It's trying to be efficient.
Right, it's an efficiency mechanism. But words only provide a superficial label. They rob us of the actual depth and significance of the moment.
Because the second you say, I wish I were up there, you aren't experiencing the balloon anymore.
No, you are experiencing a mental simulation of yourself.
Wow.
You have pulled yourself out of the present reality and inserted your ego into a hypothetical scenario.
You're experiencing your own vocabulary and your own desires instead of the reality of the morning.
Exactly. The word acts as a substitute for the experience, so dropping the word is the prerequisite to stepping off that ego treadmill.
It's the only way to maintain that freshness of mind, because when you look at the cloud without the word, you are seeing it as it actually is, ever-changing and immense.
The moment you label it, you put it in a box. You think you understand it, and you stop truly looking at it.
Which makes sense for a cloud or a balloon. It's relatively easy to look at a cloud without judging it. They don't talk back, you know? And we don't have a lot of emotional baggage tied up in the sky.
Usually not.
The real test, and where this philosophy gets incredibly difficult, is applying that exact same silent observation to the people in our lives. Here's where it gets really interesting.
This is the ultimate crucible for this theory.
Can we apply this wordless, memoryless observation to our relationships?
It asks if we can look at a wife, a husband, a daughter, a politician, a guru, or a priest without the interference of all the accumulated images we have of them.
There is this great kind of awkward moment in the transcript where Krishnamurti is presenting this idea, and he asks his audience if they can look at their spouse without their accumulated history.
And the audience gets very quiet.
Exceptionally silent, he notes. And you completely understand why. The friction of daily life builds up so many layers.
So many.
If I look at a family member, I'm seeing the argument we had yesterday. I'm seeing the habits of theirs that annoy me. I'm seeing the affection I feel based on our past.
All of it at once.
To drop all of that and just look at them as a human being, as if for the very first time. I mean, that requires dismantling the entire social structure we've built our relationship on.
It requires immense vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because categorization is how we survive socially. We use our memories and labels to predict behavior and keep ourselves safe.
But this categorization is also deeply dangerous to actual connection.
Yes. And we don't just do it with our spouses. We do it on a macro level with society. The philosophy dives into the danger of political and national labels.
Right. And before we explore these examples, we need to make something very clear for the listener regarding our approach here. A mandatory note on impartiality. We are going to discuss examples from the text involving political labels like communist or totalitarian, as well as national categories like British, French, or Indian.
And we want to be abundantly clear. We are completely impartial here.
Yes, we are not endorsing, condemning, or taking a stance on any political viewpoints. Left-wing, right-wing, none of it.
We are strictly conveying the source's philosophical ideas about how human cognition and the brain's filing system work.
Exactly. So returning to that cognitive mechanism, the argument is that the moment you categorize someone as a communist or totalitarian, or even by their nationality, you have essentially wiped them out as an individual.
You have placed them in a linguistic cage.
A cage?
And that is the absolute end of your observation of that person. The brain is caught by the word and the massive folder of biases, assumptions, and historical context attached to that word.
You are no longer looking at the complex, breathing human being in front of you. You are just interacting with your own preconceived definition of the label.
We sacrifice truth for efficiency.
Because it is so much easier for the brain to say, this person is X category, therefore I know everything I need to know about them. That's way easier than engaging with the reality of who they actually are in that specific moment.
And ironically, the audience listening to Krishnamurti was doing the exact same thing to him while he was speaking.
Right. He points out that the people sitting there have already put him into a category.
They have an image of him as a spiritual leader or a philosopher or, as he jokes, some kind of idiot.
Which completely prevents them from listening to what he is actually saying.
They are filtering his words through the image they have constructed of him.
It just highlights how pervasive the trap is. While categories and labels are the foundational tools our brains use to process the world quickly, they are the exact mechanisms that prevent us from truly seeing the world or each other.
They strip away the freshness of the mind and replace it with a stale, pre-recorded reality.
Honestly, if I'm listening to this right now, I'm probably having a bit of an existential crisis.
I wouldn't blame you.
Yeah, I'm realizing I am trapped in my own vocabulary. I constantly categorize my family based on our past. I put people in political cages so I don't have to understand them. And my entire journey of trying to be a better person is just a self-centered treadmill.
A lot to confront.
So the immediate, desperately natural reaction is to say, okay, how do I fix this? Give me the action plan. How do I move from being self-centered to truly observing?
That is the exact question that inevitably arises. How do we move from this to that?
Yeah.
But the philosophy reveals a massive paradox here.
Yeah.
Asking, how do I move from here to there, is declared to be the wrong question entirely.
I can feel the frustration a listener might have hearing that. Why is it the wrong question? If I realize my house is on fire, asking how to put it out seems like the only logical next step.
It is the wrong question because it relies on the exact same broken machinery that caused the problem in the first place.
The ego?
Yes. Think about the mechanism of the question. If you say, I am selfish, I see that now. Therefore, I must not be selfish. I must learn to observe. You are still using that egocentric movement.
The word must.
The word must is the trap. The must is the ego trying to achieve a new state for itself. It is a form of violence against your present reality.
Violence.
You are rejecting what you are in favor of an idealized future state, which is the very definition of the time-binding ego we discussed earlier.
Nice. It's like trying to lift yourself up by your own shoelaces.
Exactly. It is mechanically impossible.
You are using the ego to try and dismantle the ego. The very act of trying, the effort to change, just generates more self-centeredness because you are still focused on your own progression.
Yeah.
So if the act of trying to change is flawed, how on earth does any transformation happen?
This raises an important question. Perhaps the most critical turning point in understanding this philosophy.
Yeah.
How do you break a cycle when the sheer effort of trying to break it only reinforces it? The solution offered is profound in its simplicity. The answer is not outside the question. The answer is in the question itself.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. If I'm sitting on my couch realizing I'm caught in an ego trap, what am I actually doing if I'm not supposed to be trying to fix it?
It means that observing the desire to change, observing the frustration, reveals everything.
Just watching it.
True watching is not a step-by-step process of self-improvement. There is no manual or daily checklist. It is simply giving your absolute whole attention to a single thought.
Okay.
You never allow a single thought to escape without watching it, without being fully aware of it.
Yeah.
And when the next thought arises, you watch that one too.
You are watching the machinery of your mind work rather than letting the machinery drive your actions. But crucially, you aren't judging it.
No judgment at all?
Because if I sit there and a selfish thought pops up and I think, oh, there's an egotistical thought, I need to suppress that because I'm supposed to be observing, I've just fallen back into the trap.
Yes, that judgment is just more ego.
I have to just watch the selfish thought arise, exist, and fade away. Like watching debris float down a river from the safety of the bank. I don't try to stop the river, I just watch.
Precisely. And by doing this, you create a tremendously attentive brain. The energy that you normally waste on fighting yourself, judging yourself, and trying to force yourself into a new category is instead channeled into pure attention.
Wow.
And in that state of immediate, complete attention, something remarkable happens. This brings us to the final and arguably most profound consequence of this exploration.
The shift regarding time.
Yes, this isn't just about reducing stress or improving our relationships. This state of true observation fundamentally alters our mechanical experience of time.
Which is where we shift from psychology into something almost resembling physics.
Pretty much.
The claim in the text is that thinking about oneself is entirely caught in time, and the examples given are very poignant. It's the thoughts we carry all day long. Things like, I will fulfill my potential one day.
Or, I have no roots right now, but I am going to establish roots and a family sometime in the future.
Or even just, I don't know who I am yet.
These are defined as time-binding qualities, and the philosophy makes the bold, structural claim that this time-binding quality is essentially what the self actually is.
The self is made of time.
The self does not exist in the present moment. The self is constructed entirely of memories of the past and anticipations of the future.
So what does this all mean, like, for how we live our lives? Think about the sheer weight of psychological time you carry around with you.
It's exhausting.
So much of our daily exhaustion isn't physical. It's the mental strain of living in the future of what we must achieve to be happy, or living in the past of what we were, or what someone did to us years ago.
We're dragging a massive anchor of time behind us every single second of the day.
But true observation, perceiving without the word, without the memory, without the projection, that has no time in it whatsoever.
None. If you watch a bird in flight, and you do not label it a bird, and you do not think about where it is going or where it came from, there is no time in that observation.
Just the bird.
There is only the immediate, eternal present.
Because without the label, the bird isn't a symbol of anything. It isn't a category. It isn't a memory of a bird you saw yesterday. It just is. And you just are.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it beautifully synthesizes the core mechanics of human consciousness that Krishnamurti is trying to expose. The conclusion is that the word and the thought literally create psychological time.
Thought creates time.
Time is just memory and anticipation. Without a brain actively generating those thoughts, there is only the present. Therefore, dropping the word and stepping off the ego's treadmill of constant self-improvement doesn't just make you a bit more attentive to your surroundings.
It structurally frees you from the psychological burden of time itself.
Exactly.
That is a staggering realization to try and map onto your own life.
It takes a minute to process, for sure.
So to summarize the journey we've navigated today, we started by looking at our normal baseline reality, realizing that our constant drive for self-improvement and progress might actually be a treadmill keeping us stuck in our own self-centered egos.
Right.
We explored the mechanics of observation, learning how a simple act like watching a slowly rising balloon can be destroyed the moment our brain boots up its linguistic commentary.
The words ruin it.
We confronted the invisible, memory-built cages we lock our spouses, our friends, and our politicians into, sacrificing true human connection for cognitive efficiency. And finally, we uncovered the mechanism of time itself, realizing that our thoughts and our words are the very things constructing the psychological trap of the past and the future.
And for you, the listener, navigating a modern world characterized by relentless information overload, this is an incredibly potent framework.
It really is.
We are constantly urged by society to acquire more labels, to define our personal brands, to gather more facts, and to continuously project our identities into the future.
Always building the ego.
Right. But there is an immense radical power in recognizing the mechanics of that trap.
Hmm.
There is power in occasionally dropping the words entirely, giving up the desperate need to categorize every experience, and simply looking at the world as if your brain had no history to draw from.
We want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you step back out into your day.
Something to sit with.
The philosophy we explored tells us that to build a tremendously attentive brain, we must watch every single thought rise and fall without judgment. We must observe the machinery of our own minds.
Right.
But if thought and language are the literal mechanisms that construct our psychological sense of time and our very identity, what happens to your sense of reality and who you actually are in that tiny, silent gap between one thought ending and the next one beginning?
That gap, however brief, is the only place where true observation can exist.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the mechanics of your own mind. Keep questioning the labels you rely on. And maybe today, challenge yourself to look at just one thing, a cloud, a passing car, or even the person sitting across from you without attaching a single word to the experience.